Welcome. I'd like to say good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone, depending on where you are. And welcome to our session today, where we'll be discussing practical trust building insights from Ukraine, Mexico, and Moldova. My name is Matt Vanderwerf, and I'm a senior technical advisor at IREX. I'm based in Washington, D.C., and it's a real honor to be here today as your moderator for what I think will be a really thought-provoking and practical discussion. As we all know, trust is the foundation upon which just, prosperous, and inclusive societies are built. Yet today, we are witnessing an alarming erosion of trust worldwide, whether between individuals, within communities, or in our institutions. And this erosion is not just a theoretical concern. It has real and severe consequences. And this is something that we see at IREX across our programs. So we've launched several strategic initiatives to learn more about how we can better build trust in and through our programs, but also to hold ourselves accountable, right? To know when we're doing this well, and also to know where we have space to grow and do better. In this session, we're not just going to talk about the problem. We're going to do a deep dive into practical real-world examples of how trust can be built and improved. We'll hear stories from Ukraine, Mexico, and Moldova, 3 countries facing very different challenges, yet all demonstrating innovative approaches to rebuilding trusts in their unique contexts. Our aim is to provide you with actionable insights that you can apply in your own work. We will explore both the vertical dimensions of trust between citizens and institutions, and the horizontal dimensions of trust within communities. And spoiler alert, we think there's a really profound connection between these two that maybe hasn't been explored in the field to the extent that, that we think is important. By the end of this session, we hope to have challenged some of your assumptions about what it takes to build trust and equipped you with new strategies to take back to your own organizations and communities. Side note, we also hope that we'll just spark some conversations with you. We invite you to engage with us afterwards. We'd love to continue this conversation with those who are would like to think more and talk more with us about it. We're fortunate to have with us a distinguished panel of experts who bring a wealth of experience from the field. I'll introduce them shortly, but first I'd like to emphasize that this is intended to be a bit of an interactive session. So first, I'm going to introduce the speakers. Then we'll walk through a series of prompts and questions to hear their stories and learn from their experiences and expertise. And following that, we hope to reserve some time for Q&A discussion. We want to hear from you, just as you hear from us. So please feel free to actively engage during our discussion. Just because I'll be moderating the panel, I probably will not be able to monitor the chat during the session, but hopefully once we get to the Q&A, I can look at what's at the conversation at that point. So without further ado, let's go ahead and dive in. And as I mentioned, I'm going to start by introducing each speaker, and then we're going to get a chance to hear more about the specific program context that they represent. And I'll ask each speaker to just share an overview of that program context to sort of set a level baseline for us to have this discussion. So first, I'd like to introduce Anastasia Matvienko, who is the Civic Engagement Lead for the Unity program in Ukraine. Her work focuses on fostering youth participation in civic life, conflict-sensitive tolerance building, and social cohesion. And in her current role, she advances strategic initiatives to promote civic activism, specifically among Ukrainian youth, and encourages meaningful youth engagement in decision-making. Second, I'd like to introduce Monica Rodriguez, who is a program manager for the Ambulantes program. She is based in Mexico, where she has worked as a freelance consultant, a social entrepreneur, as well as for NGOs and government institutions. Her focus has mainly been on program design, management, and evaluation related to sustainable agricultural systems and migrant worker rights. And then finally, last but of course not least, Inessa Dorogan, who's the gender and youth advisor for the Comunitate Mea program in Moldova. She brings more than 20 years of experience with international organizations and civil society, human rights and democratic governance, gender equality, and policy analysis. So to kick things off, I'd like to ask a question for each panelist, and we do have some slides for each panelist to get started. So we'll start with Nastya from Ukraine, and the question is, can you tell us a little bit about your context, and as well as a story from your experience where trust building efforts either succeeded or faced significant challenges? And share a little bit about the takeaways from those experiences. So handing it over to you, Nastya.
Thank you, Matt. Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. I'm really happy to be here with you and to present Ukrainian experience of trust building with Unity program. Matt, if it's possible, we can switch to the next slide here. So Unity, which is Ukraine national identity through use, is a USAID-funded program. Actually, with our program, we support Ukrainian youth innovation and entrepreneurship, foster active participation in decision-making processes, and facilitate youth engagement and problem-solving at the national and local levels. Through fostering enabling environment and restoring access to formal and non-formal education opportunities, our program empowers Ukrainian young people to realize their dreams, ideas, and contributions toward Ukraine's democratic and European future. Within that priority to engage young Ukrainians into decision-making processes and influencing directly what is going on around youth in their communities, we are currently implementing an initiative which is actually envisions youth engagement in developing local publicly funded youth development programs, and such activities are also have an embedded activities to specifically address trust issues to, let's say, improve the challenges that can actually damage trust issues in the communities around local youth policies. But first, before I will go to our experience and to some insights we have around the trust building, I would also be happy to share a little bit of context in which we are implementing our activities. Such context factors will be like the major factors, general context, and also some certain issues that directly influencing trust building efforts in Ukraine around participation of youth in decision-making process. Matt, we can go to the next slide. But my story will be a little bit longer than what you can see at this slide. So first of all, just a few words about the general country context. So currently here in Ukraine, we have a full-scale invasion. In 2014, Russia launched a proxy war against Ukraine, and in 2022, a full-scale invasion. Currently, around 19% of country is occupied, and the front line stretches beyond 1,200 kilometers. There are also constant missile attacks targeting civilian infrastructure in the rear, for example, like power grid and power production infrastructure. Of course, all these factors influences general social and economic context, which cannot influence other activities implemented, then general functioning of the country, and a lot of other issues that are influencing how we currently live in this country and what we can do. There is also some additional things that are specifically around the trust issues in Ukraine. So according to our research conducted in December 2023, January 2024, around 36% of Ukrainian youth believe that their local governments do not listen to their opinions at all. Additionally, 26% of respondents identified the lack of willingness from local authorities to engage youth as a major barrier their participation in local decision-making. At the same time, this research showed that a lot of Ukrainian young people do not have any direct experience of interacting with local authorities. And there is also a specific local context, I mean, Ukrainian context, because like starting from around 216, a lot of basic services provided by the state were digitalized, meaning that a lot of services, basic services needed to be a citizen, you can receive just through the application on your smartphone, and you do not need to address directly some person in some local or state authorities. So like this is a general context. A lot of young people do not have an experience of direct participation and engagement with local authorities. And at the same time, you can see that a significant number of Ukrainian youth has mistrust with local authorities, and do not will to participate because they actually do not trust they will be truly engaged. I also have to mention that such trust issues, they are not a new thing, and that's not like a phenomenon caused by, for example, the full-scale invasion. These mistrust issues has deep historical roots, and they're also some of them influenced by Ukrainian colonial past. So it's not the new thinking. We have to understand that a lot of development programs in Ukraine work with such thing for a really long period. Of course, if we will look retrospectively, like 10 years or maybe 20, we will see the difference. But there is still a lot of job to do to develop more trust. This is a vertical trust, first of all, between citizens and between the vertical of governance in Ukraine. Of course, there are also other contextual factors that are affecting trust in Ukraine, and I will just quickly list some factors related to the full-scale invasion, because they also influence decision-making process in Ukraine. These factors mainly related to economic situation and caused by territory occupation, because part of Ukraine remain occupied, meaning that production is impossible here. Power outages, they're actually severe because large-scale power disruption can be frequent, and also it meaning that production is limited, and it also influences economic, and as follows: general capacity of public funds available for governing. And of course, factors of migration and labor market impact. Around 6.3 million people have fled the country abroad, and also 3.7 million people internally displaced within the country. Additionally, massive conscription is ongoing, and all these factors, of course, influencing also availability of labor in the market. All these factors influences, as I've already mentioned, capacity of public funds available for governance in general, including the funds that are available for the youth development programs needed to implement youth policy in Ukraine. So if I have just a few minutes right now, I will share, okay, 1 minute, I will be super fast. Actually about the activity. So as I've already mentioned, as a part of our goal to broaden youth engagement in decision-making, we implement activities that encourage youth engagement directly. Our activity envisions data-driven and participatory development of local publicly funded youth development programs. We engage mixed teams of young activists and local decision makers to develop such programs. And our activity includes training young people and decision makers in like various things related to trust building at the community level around decision-making processes, like community mapping, conducting youth needs assessments, organizing public consultations, and advocating for allocation of public trust. Our like the higher level takeaways from this activity regarding the trust building. So first of all, that local decision makers after participation in the activity do recognize that it is critical to foster trust within the community while making any decisions. Decision makers also realized that like many previous programs, not only youth related, but a lot of programs in their community did not effectively align with the needs of beneficiaries of such programs, and like addressing such gaps will be crucial for them in the future, and that specifically learning how to address trust issues is crucial for them as for the decision makers to develop trust in their community, and as follows, to address real needs of their final beneficiaries in their communities, and to prevent possible conflict situation between the local governments and population of their communities. That's it on my end for the beginning, and sorry if I took a little bit more time.
Thank you, Nastya. Appreciate you sharing a little bit about the context. I'm looking forward to hearing more. I'm going to hand it over to Monica Rodriguez now to share a little bit about the context of the Ambulantes program in Mexico.
Thank you, Matt. Thank you for everybody for being here and listening to us and sharing our stories. So I would like to share a story of Ambulantes. The picture you are seeing is one of the final event of Ambulantes. That was a press conference. In that press conference, we could have the participation of internal migrants, and more especially of women. Rural women from Mexico, it's difficult for them to get out of their communities without being accompanied by men or by an elder supervisor that could be a woman or even just a child. So having her in this press conference was really, really special for us. When it was her turn to talk, she just started crying for a moment. And then she just leaned to the person just next to her. That was the person who brought her here. That is our Caminos associate partner for this project. She breathed for a little, and then she just shared her story. So this is just an example of how trust has been part of Ambulantes. And well, how does this happen? Mati, you can. Thank you. We have been implementing Ambulantes since 2021 with the kind of donation of a private donor, Walmart, and with the support of 3 of our partners that they are knowledgeable of the communities that we work with, that are CECIG, Caminos, and Fomento. What is the aim of the project is to provide information for internal migrants to have a safer migration. We mostly work with indigenous communities from the states of Oaxaca, for example, but as well Veracruz, Guerrero, and Morelos. The information we provide is related to their labor rights, because most of their rights, just even like access to health, aren't respected, or even access to education for the people, for the kids that accompany them during their migration. And for this second phase that we're just starting, we have 3 objectives: to strengthen the capabilities of the communities of origin by providing them information on these labor rights, but as well as the barriers that they have to access to those rights and exercise them. But as well, we believe that it's not enough to strengthen and to empower this population. We have to provide them with better services. So we work with local authorities and state authorities so they can be aware of those barriers that migrants, internal migrants, have to encounter in order to exercise their rights. And as well, we have these civil society organizations that we work with at our partners in this project and we strengthen their skills and knowledge, so they can provide better services to the different communities that they work with. And lastly, we have the idea to improve the broader context with data-informed advocacy. We work with different civil society organizations or other type of actors, just to let them know as well of the information from communities of origin, such as the effects of the closure of schools directed for this population, but as well the effects on drugs, since there's not much information on it. Can you change it, Matt? So why is trust really important for ambulantes? In general, in Mexico, we don't trust. We don't trust our institutions. This has been improving lately since 2018, according to the Latino Barometer. That is a tool that we have in Latin America that is applying in 18 countries. But as you can see in this graph, we have little to no trust in our government and other types of institutions. But this not only applies to vertical trust, it as well applies to horizontal trust. We can never be too careful while dealing with others. We have to take care of how we relate to others. And yeah, we think that only 30.8% of people think that you can trust others. The rest of us is like, let's be careful about it. And besides, we have structural inequalities based on gender, on the skin color, education, language that we talk. So those are all barriers on our interactions to have a trustworthy relationship. This can be exacerbated in rural communities, but they're wondering, what are we going to get? Or what are you going to get from us if we work together? So there's this kind of suspicious. So what is that Ambulantes has done? Well, we have been working to get this trust, basically starting working with trusted indigenous institutions, such as communities assemblies. We will go there where everybody of the community can join and listen to us. For example, it was the first time for many of those communities to listen about internal migration, because it's not a migration that is taken care of in general in Mexico. We talk about other type of migrations like international, or those that come through Mexico just to go to the United States. So yeah, talking about this and put information into their hands was really meaningful for them to know that as well, what they suffer is not a personal situation, but is something that is shared among other internal migrants. We have been present in the communities, showing up regularly during their events and according to their agenda. As you can see in this picture, we have to go wherever they are. If that means that we are going to be in the field with them, that's what we will do. Another way, it's through radio that one of our partners have, and they have introduced this theme of internal migration into their program regularly. So now they have this ongoing support from them, listening regularly to safer migration information. Thank you, Matthew.
Thank you, Monica. I just want to just call out and acknowledge sort of the theme that you raised related to access to information and transparency. And I hope we'll have a time to hear a little bit more about that later on. I'm going to hand it over to Inessa now. Inessa, please share a little bit about the context of the Comunitate Mea program in Moldova.
So thank you, Mark. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending whenever you're placed. So it's an honor and a pleasure for me to present the trust building efforts of the Comunitatea Mea program. Comunitatea Mea program, it's the flagship USAID local governance program in the Republic of Moldova. And its aim is to strengthen the local government to become more efficient, transparent, and accountable to citizens through improving municipal services, increasing citizen engagement, advancing decentralization reform, and enhancing local financial management. So the program is implemented by IREX in cooperation with Urban Institute and Tetra Tech. And it's a long 8-year program, being in its 7 years of its implementation. So, and just to give you a little bit of a broader context, how we operate. So I will ask first to move to the next slide. And yeah, so to tell you that, as you know, Moldova is a young, small country, European country, sandwiched between Romania and Ukraine. So, and it gained its independence from the Soviet Union in 1991. But since then, it is still facing an unresolved conflict in its Transnistrian region, the deployment of the illegal Russian troops on its territory against the Moldovan will. It is in the closest vicinity with the unjust and illegal war of Russia against Ukraine, and it's by far the most affected country by the war after Ukraine. So currently, Moldova is struggling against Russia's hybrid threats. And despite all these challenges, so my country is trustful that it will succeed to build a prosperous, democratic, and peaceful future as part of the European Union. This year, Moldova started the negotiation to join the EU, and therefore the years ahead are crucial. And in these make or break times for my country, so Moldova needs more than ever a resilient, a strong, and united society. And here comes trust, which is essential in building it. And the local governments, which are our main partners, so are the key players in building trust with and within their communities. And unlike the statistics shown before, our program is quite fortunate to have as partners, so the local governments in Moldova being as the most trusted public institution. So with more than 70% of the Moldovan population trusting the institutions, according to the last International Republican Institute survey. Thus, from the very beginning, we are capitalizing on this huge amount of trust. And it creates an environment enabling us somehow to move the needle. So the Moldovan local governments have been so far in the front line of dealing with the COVID pandemic, with the refugee crisis, with the energy crisis. And our program has been working hard and deploying a lot of efforts to forge this trust, to consolidate the existing trust, working both with the citizens, but also with the municipalities, so that they can inform better, they can communicate, cooperate, and engage better the citizens, so that they can partner with them in decision-making, so that they can deliver better and more community-centered services, which will respond to various needs of the population. So we are supporting our partners, the local municipalities in setting their strategic plans for the next year in a truly participatory and inclusive manner. So in conducting transparent and inclusive public consultations on policy documents, on budget issues. So on engaging citizens in prioritizing their needs and implementing community initiatives, also giving them the possibility to monitor directly how these initiatives are being implemented. And the story I want to share today, so just to show you an example how this trust building really happens at the local level, is the story of a young woman from a small village north of Moldova. So she is a healthcare worker in her village and used to be active community leader even before her village joined the program. So as a healthcare worker, she interacted and had the opportunity to hear firsthand, the stories and the needs of the citizens. And in time, she became a kind of a conduit to convey these needs and priorities to the local government. When our cooperation with the village started, so CM helped the community, the Comunitatea Mea, helped this village to craft their strategic plan and to prioritize the local issues. So the woman, the lady, was heavily involved in the activities. She was sitting in the working group to draft the strategic plan. So she was behind, the polls to survey the local needs. So she was also one of the main organizers of the public consultations on the strategic plan, on prioritizing the local needs. So then she realized that in fact she can be the voice of the people she served as a healthcare worker. So, and represent their voice in a more meaningful way. As well, she could experience firsthand how valuable citizens' engagement can be by using more professional participatory tools. And as a result, she decided to run for a public office, to become a local councillor. And in the end, so her dedication, her leadership, her sense of duty paid off, and she was elected as local councillor. And what she told us later on, so was that her exposure to the Comunitatea Mea facilitated activities, in fact, was the nudge that prompted, that made that move possible for her. Now she remains at the heart of the Comunitatea Mea initiatives at the local level, be it informational campaigns on issues identified by the society, sitting as a member of the community oversight group to monitor the implementation of a community development project, which is supported by Comunitatea Mea. And what this story tells us is that people need to be involved, they want to be involved, and the more they are involved, the more they see results, so the more willing they will be to be further involved. So, and for people being engaged in community activities and in decision making is a result of increased trust in the authorities, but for the leadership, for the local authorities, so this citizen engagement and mobilization is a kind of a tool on how to build trust. And the main takeaway is that after these years of supporting both citizens and local authorities to better cooperate, is that the paradigm has changed. So if before, initially, the people just joined to solve one community problem, be it, like monitoring a project or crafting a strategic plan. So then when the project ended, the energy remained, the spirit remained. People wanted to get more involved. Some of them even ran for office. And to us, this is an evidence, a testament of trust at the local level. So, and it is also essential to obtaining the project goal of having more transparent, more accountable local governments in Moldova, and to increase further the level of trust and expand it to other categories that are now probably more left behind or left aside, like the underrepresented groups or youth or women. Thank you.
Thank you, Inessa. I appreciate each of you sharing a little bit of context. I want to raise up something that I heard Inessa say, that trust building is both an outcome and a tool or a process itself, and perhaps something that we can dig into a little bit more. I'm going to move on now into a question specifically for Nastya. And I wonder if you could share a little bit more about the context in Ukraine, especially given Russia's full-scale invasion. Could you share a little bit about how it's influenced interpersonal trust, so what we're calling horizontal trust within or across communities, versus vertical trust, right? So trust between people and public institutions. And given specifically that your program works to build shared national identity through youth, I wonder if you could reflect on some specific examples you've observed and addressed within your program. So handing it over to you, Nastya.
Yeah, thank you, Matt, for your wonderful question. Actually, I will start from the war influence on vertical and horizontal trust issues. So first of all, I have to say that the full-scale invasion has reshaped trust dynamics in Ukraine. But trust in government institutions has significantly increased with the start of the full-scale invasion, specifically because the people were really united to defend our country. And of course, the full-scale invasion also influenced trust at the horizontal level, because traditional interpersonal mistrust issues have receded into the background. For example, if we did have like certain groups of or categories that were traditionally marginalized or even were under the risk of the hostilities, these issues receded with the full-scale invasion, because for the first and the main issue for all of us was and still stays is actually defending our existence as an independent country with our own vision on how to develop ourselves. Of course, at the end of the third year of the full-scale invasion, we observe some descending trends in trust to governance institutions, but still in general, trust remains very high. There are also some signs of emerging new divisions at the horizontal level. Of course, they are different to those that were actual prior to the full-scale invasion, and in a lot of cases, researchers actually notice the external influence to such new emerging divisions, meaning that a lot of emerged really, let's say, small divisions were directly influenced by external misinformation and disinformation campaigns launched from abroad by Russia. So that's like the general context about the trust in Ukraine after the full-scale invasion. But also there are some, let's say, lower level issues related to the trust and building trust that of course also influenced by the war, and these specific issues were those we addressed and actually continue to address within our activities of supporting Ukrainian youth. So as I've already mentioned at the first part of my speech, when I was presenting the general context of the country, I am intentionally mentioned a lot of factors at the social economic level. And actually, these factors directly influence the capacity of state budget revenues. That is actually then a part of the expenditures available for both like national government and local authorities to spend to other issues besides the direct needs of country related to the defendants and the war. I also have to mention that there is like actually a strong decentralization of budgets in Ukraine, meaning that Ukraine is not a federal state, it is a republic, but still local authorities have a lot of powers on deciding on what specific needs local public funds will be distributed for. So within this context, we continue to support strategic goals, to support youth development with local publicly funded youth development programs, including like the efforts to support economic opportunities for youth, formal and non-formal education opportunities for Ukrainian youth, implemented by local authorities and funded from local public funds. At the first sight, in the context of the war, when the budgets are really stretched thin, thank you, then advocation and decision of local authorities to fund youth development program may appear not a priority to public. And actually there is like a lot of public debates around the priorities of public funding in Ukraine right now. But with the embedded trust building activities within everything that we are doing to launch local publicly funded youth development programs, we observe that it prevents emerging conflicts around the decision made, and it prevents mistrust development. So like we can confirm that even under the wartime conditions, trust building activities within the process of decision making are crucial, especially when it goes to decisions related to distributing public funds.
Thank you, Nastya. Monica, let's hear from you. In your work on the Ambulantes program in Mexico, I wonder how you see the relationship between institutional trust and interpersonal trust. Can one exist without the other, or do you think they're inherently linked?
Thank you, Matthew. No, I think they are inherently linked. We'll still need to know much more of how they are linked together and how they affect each other, but we can see the effects already on it. For example, we have institutions, indigenous institutions that have fostered interpersonal trust. There are certain activities, like for example, the community assemblies that I have already mentioned, where they are discuss all the issues of the community, and for example, guided to work together in community work, such as Tequio, that is something that we do in Oaxaca to improve the communities or take care of certain challenges in the community, like taking care of the forest, for example. So that has built a relationship among the community members, and they can get to know each other and get to see how their community be better. This we have seen that has impact that whenever they are migrating, they decide to unite together and migrate together whenever it's possible. So they will not do their trip to the ranches in the north of Mexico alone. They will generally do it among groups. And what we're trying to do is like as well, continue with this trust relationship that they have, so they can take care of each other during their work, like so they can be alert whenever someone is suffering of a health issue or a mistreatment from the employer, and they can support each other and go forward with those institutions that are not respecting their rights, that in this case will be, for example, the employer. But as well, there's the trust that they have given to other actors like CSOs, civil society organizations that we work with, and that they know already that they can count on them, that they will be there to support them. So they, since the relationship that they have been building of being present and caretaking, they know that whenever they have an emergency, they can count on these institutions that are the civil society organizations. And as well, we can see how the relationship with governmental institutions could be a little bit tougher. Like they don't have access to justice because of several situations, the resources they don't have, like just the time-wise, or even that they are far away. So what we're trying to let them know is that those barriers do exist, and it's not only of them as a person, but as a group, and as well for the institution to be able to see those barriers of how difficult could be for them to access and be, well, yeah, exercise their rights.
Thanks, Monica. Inessa, I wonder if we could talk a little bit specifically about the intersection between trust and gender and social inclusion. This is your area of expertise and what you focus on in Moldova. I wonder if you could share a little bit how you've seen local governments adapt their approaches to better respond to diverse needs of their citizens, particularly women and underserved communities. I wonder if you could share a few specific strategies or initiatives that have been particularly effective in fostering more inclusive and responsive trust between these groups and their representatives.
Yeah, thank you, Max, for the question. And just to answer your first question, I will go back to my mentioning that the local government units have been in the front line of dealing with the refugee crisis. So when the war against Ukraine started, so Moldova, at the peak of the crisis, Moldova received more than 1 million Ukrainian refugees, given its population of 2 million and a half. So therefore, it was, so we witnessed and we commended the local governments for being in the front line, for mobilizing in record time in transforming the educational, social, health, existing facilities in their localities to provide shelter for refugees. So in mobilizing, so the local community to open their homes for the refugees, so to support them with their basic needs like food and clothes and so on. So Comunitatea Mea program was going hand in hand with the local authorities, with the local governments in these challenges, and it continues to support the local authorities to provide better social services to refugees through supporting direct social service investments or through technical assistance, expertise, also providing better services for the elderly, for the people with disabilities, as well. I would say that through our focus tool, it's a tool that was developed by Tetra Tech and implemented around the globe and or adapted to the Moldovan realities. So it is a tool that helps the local municipalities to self-assess the functional and administrative capacities. We are helping the municipalities to better integrate gender equality and social inclusion in their internal documents. So be it purely internal documents related to recruitment, promotion, and professional development, but also in relation to their institutional communication, so that they reach out to diverse groups of people in their communities, or to set up, to improve their processes and their mechanisms in dealing with cases of child protection, of violence against women at the local level. That it is a task which is assigned to the local government in Moldova. Moreover, we are placing a huge focus on helping our partner municipalities to engage with youth and to better respond to the youth needs. So we have piloted various initiatives, starting with helping the local authorities to engage youth in discussions about the local budget, in conducting and making more transparent public consultations on local policies. So we had wonderful examples when, just newly created local youth councils managed to build strong, and trustful relationship with the authorities, and managed to advocate so that their priorities are included in their local budget. So this is just a few of the examples. So as I said, we are working with many partners and on very different topics. But indeed, gender equality, social inclusion, and trust. So they interact and they mingle, and they are embedded as a cross-cutting issue in all our activities. Thank you.
Thanks, Inessa. I want to hand it back over to Monica. And Monica, I wonder if you could help us get practical. I wonder if you could help us think very concretely about some strategies or activities that you have found effective in rebuilding trust where trust has been lost, or in building trust where it just doesn't yet exist. And I'd love to hear some specific examples, especially if you've seen some sort of measurable improvements as a result.
Yes, thank you, Matthew. So I guess the first thing, it will be to be responsible. And that means that whenever we encounter a challenge or even have a mishap or a mistake, be really straightforward with it and acknowledge it. And acknowledge it with everything that has it involved, not only with what is the goal to resolve it, but as well the emotions that were involved in it. So that will be one of the first things. And for this one, I want to comment about the relationship that we have had with our partners to implement this project with the CSOs. We have built since the beginning a relationship of trust with straightforward communication of what is the length of our support and where is it, and as well be knowledgeable of the context and different challenges that they have while implementing the project.
Yes, but not while I'm cooking, but while I'm eating.
One of the things that happened, for example, during the first phase of our program is that we were behind on the implementation, and this was related to the context that was the COVID pandemic. So we worked with them, and luckily as well, we had the flexibility with our donor to try to work out a solution on how to implement and in the end be responsible with the goals we had with the communities and with our donor. We work out a solution, and just having their input and working together has built a relationship with our partners during this job. So whenever we have encountered other challenges, like for example, leveling what we expect from monitoring and evaluation, then we can rely on this communication and this working together to encounter a challenge, to address a challenge. And what happened during this monitoring and evaluation, trying of leveling up, is recognizing and that our partners have different capabilities in this area, and as well giving a space for emotion wherever it was too challenging, and they could directly tell us like, this could be too much, or I think there could be easier ways. And one of the things that we did for this challenge was to get support from someone from the outside that could be much more in touch with the context that they live in, and as well like being more with them. So that is one of the things that has helped it. And another thing that is really practical for us is don't ask for input and then ignore it. We have been working with them for many of the steps of the program. Like, for example, for the second phase of the program, we base our proposal, what it's going to be, based on the results of Ambulantes 1, but as well on direct interviews with our partners of seeing what works, what are the needs of our communities that we work with, and then propose something for this second phase. And as well, it was actually our communities that requested more information, for example, on labor rights, after seeing what our interviews for our database on their routes and their wages and the mistreatments or rights that were respected. They said, okay, yeah, I want to know more about rights, but how can I make them be respected? So yeah, always giving back the information that they give us back so they can reflect and we can keep on building on their inputs. So just to recap, it will be to be responsible, unite against the challenge, and don't ask for input and then ignore it.
Thank you, Monica. I want to turn back to Inessa now. And one of the things the organizers of this conference have challenged us to do is to challenge some of our own assumptions, right? To challenge some of the things that we may, some of the practices that we may have that may be unintentionally harming our goals. And I wonder if, Inessa, you would be willing to reflect on some of the common practices, the way our field works, whether the peace building or development field work that you've observed, which unintentionally undermine trust. And I wonder if you can offer any suggestions about how these challenges can be addressed.
So thank you, Matt. That's a challenging question. So so I was speaking respect of what we're working with here. So in the Republic of Moldova, and what I probably would say first is that the local context, so the local culture, the mentality matters, and it has to be taken into account. For example, in Moldovan reality, so we still have a strong Soviet legacy, of people being less willing to involve. So they or the local authorities, they need to be taught, to engage. It doesn't come as natural, So this people engagement, so this I think we have to be. To overcome this, we have to go from the very beginning at the really grassroots level to have more and more people on board, from the very beginning, to listen to local leaders, to have local community leaders, to listen to youth, to listen to diverse, voices on the local level, so that we also give them, the chance to own and to lead the process, and and build trust based on their own experiences, on the existing environment, that sometimes, it's difficult to understand that it's different. It's different not in terms of each country. It can be different in terms of each region, and it's each county of the same country, even if, given the small size of Moldova. So what can we do to address is to listen, to invest more, and to educate, and try to educate. So and have particularly use to capacitate youth in civic engagement, to capacitate youth to empower them and to listen to their voices and to let them help us to do a better work on the field. So yeah, sometimes it can be as practical issues like limited time, limited resources, but I think the question of context and culture and mentality is more important here. Thanks.
Thank you, Anessa. I think that we can do our last round of questions before we open it up to Q&A, but I'm going to ask each of our panelists to keep your responses even much shorter. So I'm going to say like 1 minute responses to the last questions, and then that'll make sure that we have some time for the audience. And then I'll just invite now anybody in the audience who would like to ask a question of the speakers. Please feel free to write your question in the chat, and the speakers can take those questions as they feel able once we get there. So a last round of quick questions, and I'm going to start with Nastya. And this is a hard question to answer very quickly, but I wonder, Nastya, if you could talk about the future a little bit, especially given the global rise in authoritarianism and the erosion of democratic norms. How can peace builders effectively prioritize trust building in their programs?
Modern global trends bring a lot of new challenges to address regarding building the trust, but probably my answer will be around, let's say, to someone it will be obvious, maybe to someone it will be something new, but mostly it's the general principles of civic engagement and developing decisions that will be trusted within the society. Of course, I speak from my level of expertise related to participation in decision making and governance, especially local governance in general. So, like, my recipe would be the following: commitment to serving public needs, meaning that you have to develop data-driven and participatory decisions. Proactive communication and awareness raising before the issues of mistrust will emerge. So just work ahead of emerging some bad things. Inclusive public consultations, meaning that diverse voices participated and heard within the decision-making process. And finally, but the last but not the least, meaningful feedback. I specifically love this part because people need not only to participate, but they also need to see that their input was considered and also taken into account and implemented in a specific way, or some part of the input were not considered because of X, Y, Z, because there is certain factors that influenced this decision. That's my recipe for decision makers to continue developing trusted decisions serving their communities.
Thank you, Nastya. And Anessa, I want to ask you a little bit about youth. Many communities in Moldova face challenges when it comes to making sure that that youth are engaged and invested specifically in civic life. And based on your experience, what recommendations do you have for donors or other implementers to ensure that trust building between youth and local government is effectively integrated into their strategies?
Yeah, thank you, Matt. So you rightly said that's indeed we are witnessing a declining engagement and trust of youth in institutions and in their level of civic engagement, not only in Moldova, but probably in many places on the globe. So I don't want to repeat many of what Anastasia said in general, so because they are valid also here. So, but probably what we shall do is to really think of building trust and prioritizing youth, as an explicit standalone goal, when we conceptualize the strategies and projects. So this means also devoting enough resources, enough time for capacity building, for trust building activities, so for reaching out to youth. Also, I think it is important that we build on the already existing experiences, on the existing, that we capitalize on the champion youth leaders at the local level, at the grassroots level, so that we do not start, from scratch every time. So we start a project, but so we work more on, informed data and on investigating the context, so that we champion the existing young leaders without, of course, and with due consideration of taking account of bringing more diverse voices. So this is probably, and again, we have to invest, to educate and to empower youth, and to teach also the local institutions, but also schools, also involve public libraries, so the central government, to listen and to give, space for youth to manifest themselves, because as we say in our program, this will not only enhance and increase trust now, but it will also educate and raise a next generation of young leaders, which will be missing terribly in the next few years. And therefore, it is that important to prioritize youth and to invest in them.
Thanks, Vanessa. Monica, last question goes to you, and I haven't seen any questions in the chat, so here's your chance. Here's your chance. Place a question in the chat if you'd like to ask something of our terrific panel today. This question for you, Monica: how can participants? So we're going to turn it back to the audience. How can participants in this session apply some of the trust building strategies discussed today in their own work? What sort of steps would you recommend?
Okay, so some first steps that I will recommend is really get to know your context, and obviously always be aware. I think here we have said like so many times how context has impact our trust building strategies throughout it. So that is like a key one, to always be aware and mapping the different actors and institutions that interact. Whenever you choose to interact with some of them, try to be neutral so you can work with all of them, acknowledge all the opportunities that you have to strengthen their position already, and work with them, even with those that you don't suspect that could be natural leaders. But for example, people that are always in the communities and are caring in another type of way, that would be like, for example, for ambulantes, the case of women, they are the ones that are present and showing their interest for the well-being of their families, so they can communicate this information that you are providing during communities assemblies, where they can be participating and taking it back to those family members that were part of those communities assemblies, for example. As well, see that they have potential to be leaders in their communities in other ways. So try to strengthen those. And as I have already said, like always be responsible. And that means like having a concrete communication on what is to be expected and be assertive with it, and be always really with a lot of transparency, say wherever you have limitations and acknowledge the mishaps. I think that will be it, Matt.
Thank you so much, Monica. I don't see any questions in the chat yet. So we can stay on for a couple minutes till the end of the session. And if there are any questions that do come up, I'm sure our panelists would be happy to take them. I would like to say thank you to a number of people. I'd like to say thank you, first of all, to each of our panelists for bringing your expertise and your time and attention to this community here today. I know that it takes something, that you have a lot going on. And so I just want to acknowledge your contributions and sort of the expertise that you've brought. I'd also like to thank the organizers, Alliance for Peacebuilding, of course, especially Nick and Liz, and then Adia, who helped with managing the session today. We really appreciate you. I have been sort of taking notes during the session, and there are a few different things a few different themes that I pulled out that I just wanted to reflect on, that I heard. And one is intention. Something that kept coming up for me from the panelists had to do with being intentional and having intention in not just the what of their work, but the how as well, right? So not just checking boxes on a work plan or activities, but really crafting and carrying out their work in a way that was intentional. And the second thing that I heard come through was maybe perhaps more aspirational, was just a recognized need for us to pay attention and to invest in measuring, right? And understanding trust dynamics and trying to understand where trust does and does not exist, and how we might both leverage but also learn from where we can do better. And so those were just a few reflections that I had that I wanted to share. We're just about at time now, so I will go ahead and just sort of officially close out the session, but I imagine myself and my colleagues will be happy to stay on in the chat. If you'd like to reach out to us, our contact information is in the conference agenda. And we're just really grateful for all of you for participating here today. So thank you, and to have a good morning, a good afternoon, and a good evening. Take care.